Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to week number 16 for Project 2020. With it being a holiday weekend, we just received the last print runs from week 15 this morning, so we're a little out of whack there. So we're going to touch on those. We're going to talk about the Thursday cards from Saturday, and we're also going to dive into Ted Williams and Sandy Koufax, as both of those cards did just get released this morning, the Ted Williams by Don C and the Sandy Koufax by our favorite Ermsey. At the same time, I'm also going to dive into StockX and decide right now, is it for buyers or is it for sellers? Hopefully you and everyone around you had a fantastic holiday weekend and you picked up the cards that you were looking to for Project 2020. The print runs did come down a little bit, and some of the numbers were surprising. Over the holiday weekend, I was 50% on the projections, but for the week overall, 7 of the 10 cards fell within my ranges, which was very, very good to see. It's good to see that the buying trends are staying pretty static. There's no sort of these one-off situations or these no random occurrences, but it was good to see the numbers continue to be reduced, at the same time being very static. But when you look at the cards from Thursday and from Friday, Frank Thomas came in at 6.6 thousand, Mike Trout 14.8, Willie Mays 5.9, and the JK5 at 4.3. So on those 4 cards, what are the takeaways? And I kind of have one per card here. And the first one is with the Frank Thomas. That, of course, was a miss on my part. That one exceeded expectations. It's been very rare that I undershoot a card, but I did misunderstand the demand and the desire for a no name on front Frank Thomas. There was a lot of comments I was reading over, after it was released about liking the no name on front and that kind of style of the card. But I was really surprised to see people buy that card 5, 10, 15x on the website. I don't think it was individual buyers, but if an artist wants to drive Frank Thomas cards, I think there's your formula right there. No name on front, and great job by Keith Shore coming in at 6.6K. Now on the flip side, and in the same day we had a card exceed expectations, we had a card miss expectations, and that's with that Sophia Chang Mike Trout. Everyone knows my affection for this card and why I think that this card is her best work overall. And even though I'm not a Mike Trout fan, this card was fantastic and it was correct for the time period with the 4th of July, red, blue. But that card misses under 15,000. I was really surprised that card came in under 17,000. I was really locked in on 17,000 based on the fact that his last 2 cards had an eBay penetration of 1.8%, and I was pretty certain this card would come in right at 1.8 again. Even if it went to like 1.85, I was still within my range. But this one spiked all the way to 2%. Is there potential that people are realizing that a Mike Trout card is not the best resale target because the print runs are so elevated? We'll find out, but he was very surprised to see that card come in under 15,000, when to me, that was Mike Trout's best card. On the JK5, Bob Gibson, and I really hope you got to see his 1-minute video talking about the card and talking about his transition. He is now going to have more color in his work, and although this card did fall in my range, I had a 4.2 to 5.25. I was a little surprised it came in really at the bottom of the range at 4.3. This is the lowest card, or this is the lowest printed card we've had since the Joshua Vides Tony Gwynn at, I believe, 64. So it's been a while since we've been this slow, and that begs the question, is this card going to lead us into the 3K range this week? We'll find out. We'll see. But I was really surprised this card, which to me was JK5's best work with the color edition, come in so low at 4.3. On the other side here, the Willie Mays Blake Jamison poses us a real big question in the Project 2020 economy. Blake on his stream said he purchased more Willie Mays than he has of any other card so far that's been released. We know, and he said that he purchased 1,000 Trouts to sell for autographs, which means the reason why that print run for the Willie Mays is so high is because he purchased over 1,000 cards. The question becomes, if you're a fan of Blake Jamison, do you stop buying the base card? Do you only buy the autographs? Now, the autographs are going to be very expensive, and they're going to be something that I don't think everyone can afford all the time. But when you start seeing these print runs sort of balloon on these artists, do the fans shift away from buying a single copy and then only buying the autograph? Okay, let's now shift away from opinion and get into some fact-based talking, and this is around the market. I really hope you got a chance to watch our Friday episode where I talked about why I think this past weekend was probably the best buying weekend for the next few weeks because of the way the Project 2020 economy is working. And again, this weekend, the prices surged and it was great to see. And the best part is, if you really think about it, there's no reason why these cards are going up other than just natural demand is driving these card prices up. And that's what we need right now. And that is what really staves off really any kind of potential returns in the future or the pump and dump that we saw almost 6 weeks ago. This sort of slow nature growth is just fantastic to see. But now let's take a look at some first player and some second player pricing. So on the screen here, first player pricing, when you look at 630 to 74, 15 of the 20 cards are up over where we were from 623 to 629. Even Ichiro up 3% at over $1,400. Mike Trout now up to nearly $800. You know, Bob Gibson by Grotesque over $300. And then when you look at second player pricing, 16 of the 20 cards are positive over last week. And when you look at yesterday's pricing, again, strong performance. Ichiro $345, Dwight Gooden $355, Frank Thomas $150, Bob Gibson $268. But please do not let these prices going up the way they are trick you into thinking that cards printed 6, 7, 8, 9, 15,000 are going to be going up the same way. There's just too much inventory of those right now. If you're looking for cards to resell in the future, I would still stick with definitely cards under 3,000 and potentially cards under 4,000. It's still unknown at the moment if we have a card printed at 4,500 or 5,000 what the long-term value of that card is. But now let's take to the skies and let's take a look at this Ted Williams by Don C. And if there's one thing we've learned from Don C over his 5 cards now is he goes super meta here, and you really have to understand the player to understand the reference, just like we had the AU Gold with Frank Thomas, the Iron Man with Cal Ripken. That's kind of pretty simple. You know, with this Ted Williams, I had to ask people out there on Twitter. I don't see the reference to the skies, but it became very clear after a couple of responses that this card is because he was a fighter pilot in World War II. So this is a great reference overall for Ted Williams, and someone like myself who does not know a lot about Ted Williams, it's a great card overall. And now when you take a look at Don C's cards, he's only had 4. This is actually his 5th now. So we had the Frank Thomas, the Cal Ripken, the Griffey, and the Willie Mays. So this Williams is a great addition to his collection. But more importantly here, taking a look at Ted Williams, this is now his 7th card. He's the last player to have his 7th card. He had 6 all last week, so I'm not surprised to see him with the card this morning. But his first card was JK5, then Fucci, then Ermsey, F. Old Man Allen, and then the Tyson back. Now, when you look at the artist and the player, what are my favorites? On Don C, I just don't really have a favorite yet. I want to see more of his work, but with only 5 cards, maybe the Griffey because I'm a Mariners fan, but at the same time, I don't really see the card. So, you know, it's tough to say right now what his favorite is or what my favorite is of his. On the Ted Williams, though, this one's cut and dry. I mentioned it last week, but the Tyson Beck Ted Williams, to me, is Ted Williams' best card. And then second here is the Old Man Allen. I love the Old Man Allen, the photography of that card. But number one for me on Ted Williams, it is that Tyson Beck. So if you don't have that card, go pick it up. So speaking on where to go pick up the card, where else can you buy cards other than eBay? We know of Facebook, we know of Instagram, but one website out there that's trying to make a play in this market and with the overall flip investment perspective is StockX. Now, I'll be very honest, I was not aware of StockX until the National last year where Gary Vee had his panel, and so I learned about StockX because I'm not a sneakerhead, I don't know much about shoes, so I was not in tune with that world. But StockX is now, you can sell collectibles on there, and they're trying to really make a name here with Project 2020. So this weekend, because there was not a show, I wanted to do a deep dive into StockX and figure out, is this the best avenue to sell, or is this the best avenue to buy? There's 2 different segments here. Now, from a seller perspective, the challenge we're having right now with Project 2020, or at least not right now, but we were 6 weeks ago, were the amount of returns on eBay. And look, returns are a necessary evil on eBay. We need a return policy on this website because if there were not, we would get scammed night and day by people on eBay. So if you think that I'm against return policies, I'm not. They're proper, but when they're abused, they're not proper. And that is one good thing that StockX does not have. StockX, because of how their system works, does not have a return policy, but it's because of how their process works. So anybody, myself right now, I could go on to StockX, make an account, and sell something. When that item sells, I then send it to them for them to authenticate, and then they send it to the buyer. But within this process, there is no return policy. So from a sales perspective, your sales are final. Once you have your money, you have your money. But to get there and to guarantee your sale from a seller's perspective, you have to give up one big thing, and that is top dollar for your item. On eBay right now, you can go sell an Ichiro for $1,400, $1,500, and when you sell it and you send it to the buyer, they're gonna have it in a couple of days. With StockX, if you sell an item, you have to send it to them within 2 business days. Then it has to ship to them. So that's probably 4 to 5 business days there, depending on where you are in location to their processing centers. Then they have to authenticate it, and then your buyer gets it. I was looking on their website. It takes anywhere between 10 to 12 business days to finally receive your item. In the world of collectibles, that is an eternity. So if you are going to give up the return policy and give up potential returns, you're gonna have to give up getting top dollar. And when you talk about top dollar, here are just a couple examples of cards that have sold recently on StockX. I will say StockX gives everybody some great information as far as when it sells, what it sells, but it is an anonymous website in a sense, so yeah, I think it has to give out this kind of sales information. But for example, the Ichiro we talked about a second ago, selling on eBay for $1,400. On 7/5, that card sold for $11.61. So just a couple of days ago, that card is $300 cheaper on StockX. On 7/3, that card sold for $1,300, and that's a little bit higher, a little bit closer, but still, that buyer has to now wait 3 weeks for this card. Looking at Sandy Koufax card number 2, $325 on June 23rd. That card at that time was selling for $420. So that's a big gap there to give up for a return policy. So I don't necessarily know that if giving up a return policy is worth it when you lose this amount of money on a sale. And even looking at second player cards here, like the Tony Gwynn Grotesque, 185 on 7/3. Now that card is 196 on eBay, so that's closer. But then you look at 629, 167. So there are some ranges here that are close, but at the end of the day, to me, StockX is all about buying. If you're a buyer looking for a deal, I would use StockX because that is the lowest price you're gonna find. But it's gonna take you probably 3 weeks to get your card, if not longer. I don't know if it's worth saving $20 to wait 3 weeks. Some people it might, but if I want the card, I want the card now, and I want to get it in within a couple of days. I don't think in the sports card world we're ready for 3-week delivery times. That might be what's norm in the sneaker business because of the authenticity needed on these shoes. But I don't know in sports cards if you really need a 3-week buying window for this. Yes, it benefits the seller to not have that return policy. But on the buyer perspective, if I'm saving $20, I don't know if it's worth 3 weeks. And it's also why I'm not going to include the StockX numbers into my formula, into my charts, because they're 2 different markets. If they work the same way, I could easily work them in. But the StockX prices are always going to be lower because the sellers are giving up a return policy and their money is secure. So to me, buyers are never paying full price, and so we're never going to understand the real market potential for these cards when they're being sold on StockX. Let's shift gears here and let's have some fun. And when you think of fun and you think of Project 2020, Ermsey is fun. This Koufax is just an incredibly fun card to look at. I think his designs are great overall. And this is his 7th card so far. Of course, we know the Mike Trout. Then we had the Ichiro, Dwight Gooden, Bob Gibson, Derek Jeter, and then recently with the George Brett, which was kind of backwards, but kind of not backward. And then when you look at Koufax altogether, this is his 8th card, and it's been 5 horizontal and 3 vertical. I'm still waiting for someone to take a vertical card horizontal. That'll be great to see. But Koufax has had Rochester, Old Man Allen, Natural, and then Joshua Vides on the horizontal cards. And then the vertical, he's had Andrew Thiel, Fucci, which is the King of the Hill card, and then he had recently Tyson Beck. So when it comes to my favorite Ermsey card, I think number 1 has to be the Bob Gibson. I just got that in the mail last week, or actually 2 weeks ago now. I'm still waiting for 87 and 88. but that card I think is great. Second up for Ermsey is that Ichiro. I'd be curious, though, in the comments, what is your favorite Ermsey card at the moment? Same with Sandy Koufax. And then on Sandy Koufax, my favorite card right now with him is that Fucci. I call it King of the Hill. I think it's too great of a card. And then second is Tyson Beck. If you like this video and want more Project 2020 news and notes from me, please check out the playlist on the screen right now.